Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Australia's inaugural national event to celebrate the International Day for Women in Maritime. This event is jointly hosted by the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, Women's International Shipping and Trade Association Australia, and the Nautical Institute. Last year, the International Maritime Organisation recognised the first International Day for Women in Maritime. Today, we recognise and celebrate diversity in Australia's maritime industry on this, the second International Day for Women in Maritime. It's great to see so many people here in the room with us today, as well as all of those people who are joining us online from around the world. My name's John Drummond. I'm your MC for today. I'm also in the maritime industry, being a marine pilot for the Port Authority of New South Wales in Sydney and Port Botany. It was an honour to be invited here today to be an MC for such an important event in our maritime calendar. Before we move on to today's formalities, I'll just cover off on some housekeeping items. Firstly, if we can just make sure everyone has their mobile phone set to silent, and if you need to use the bathrooms, they're just located outside in the lift foyer area where we entered from. If we have an emergency, we'll file out through the doors, past the lifts and down through the fire stairs, and we'll proceed down the street along towards Scratchley's restaurant, and the evacuation muster point is across the road from the Scratchley's restaurant. There will be fire wardens if anyone needs assistance if that occurs. As we gather here on the land adjacent to the harbour and ports where we go about our work, we acknowledge the thousands of years of First Nations leadership and environmental stewardship. The Awabakal Aboriginal Land Council CEO, Kamara Kelly, was set to join us today for a welcome to country. Unfortunately, Kamara hasn't been able to attend, but she's asked me to say a few words. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Awabakal and the Worimi people, and pay our respects to the elders, both past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and hopes of Aboriginal Australia. We must always remember that under the concrete and the asphalt, and this land is, was and always will be traditional Aboriginal land. For today's event, we're going to split it into two sessions. Firstly, there's going to be a technical panel presentation and a discussion. Following on from this, there'll be an informal social networking session over drinks and canapes. Our online participants will be joining us for the first session, and they can also participate through an online open question and answer forum. It's now my pleasure to invite the Australian Maritime Safety Authority CEO, Mick Kinley, to come forward and provide some opening remarks for today's event. Thanks, Mick.
Thanks, John. And hi, everyone. My name is Mick Kinley. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. We're Australia's national agency responsible for shipping safety, responding to maritime and aviation incidents and pollution response. So welcome everyone joining this event online and here in Newcastle. And I always remind everyone when I come to Newcastle that this is where AMSA was meant to be established. Peter Morris, who was the minister here many years ago, was our spiritual father. He did the first ships of shame inquiry. And so Newcastle is very special to us as a key port. Now, before I begin, I would like to acknowledge also the Awabakal people and the Worimi people, traditional custodians of the lands and the waters on which we're meeting today. I pay my respect to the elders past and present and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining in person or online today. Now, I'm always a bit wary about, I'm clearly not a woman in maritime, and I'm clearly about as diverse as white bread. But I do take very seriously the authority that I have to be able to change that situation for the future. And that is why I do like to be able to speak at these sorts of events. We're all here because we are striving to remove barriers for women to fully participate in maritime industries, which is vital for the success of those industries. Globally, it is still a key global means for which trade and keeps the economies of the world running. The benefits of more women accessing the sector is well known. Even the shipping industry has woken up that they are not getting access to the talent they need for the future. And in a world where they're going to have to fight harder for the talent that's there, they need access, and basically the industry is excluding itself from half the talent pool if they're not competing in that space. It also supports the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Now, the IMO, International Maritime Organisation, the UN specialised agency that deals with shipping, initiated the gender program back in 1988 to address the severe gender imbalance across the industry. And it's interesting, my notes, it says it wasn't until 2018 when we started seeing tangible change. And as I was reminded by Gillian Carson-Jackson, it's the industry's actually gone backwards from when she entered the industry. So whether the tangible change has been happening in the right direction or not is questionable. But it was that year that the IMO dedicated a year to empowering women in the maritime industry. And it was very clear, and the mood in the IMO at that time was very much, well, you can't just have 1 year. I mean, they had a really good badge, I do remember that, but that wasn't going to fix everything. You actually have to take long and sustained action to make this change. And the idea about having a day dedicated for women in maritime actually came out of our region. So the Pacific Women in Maritime first floated the idea. We were very happy to take that through the Asia Pacific Heads of Maritime Agencies, for which we're the Secretariat, to the IMO. People tried to kill it off at various times, but we did get there in the end, and now we have the day. And sponsored through the IMO, through PNG and ourselves, with the International Day for Women in Maritime, the second one. And now we have it, we actually have to use it to make a difference and actually make change. It's not going to be easy. You can't just have a day, you can't just have cupcakes and badges. You actually need to plan to make change happen. You need a strategy, you need a plan, and you need measurable and concrete actions. It's what we've done in our organisation with our Gender Equity Action Plan. We also have to be prepared to play the long game with this. You're not going to fix this overnight. We've actually got to get young women entering the industry, and again, we do our bit to assist this through scholarships, through the Maritime College and other organisations, to bring the young women into the industry and grow them, show them the opportunities that the industry has, and there are many and varied opportunities across the industry to deal with this issue, and it's not going to happen overnight. So I'm honoured to be here today. I'm really interested to hear what the panel's got to say, and really appreciate the time they've all given. We're very proud to collaborate with WISTA Australia, the Nautical Institute and the Port of Australia, what will hopefully be the first of many annual events to celebrate International Day for Women in Maritime. Make real change happen, and I look forward to the day's discussion, and thank you all. Cheers, John.
Thanks, Mick, for setting the scene not only for today's event, but for future work and commitment that is required to maintain diversity, equity and inclusion as part of how we work every day. Events such as these can only occur because of the people, ports and maritime community who come together to lend greater voices, action, knowledge and experience to solving the increasingly complex issues we are facing across the maritime industry as we pursue greater sustainability. Port of Newcastle are pleased to partner with AMSA, WISTA Australia and Nautical Institute on this event, as it's linked closely with their own objectives of increasing diversity and inclusion in their workforce. Port of Newcastle have a diversity and inclusion strategy that sets out clear priorities across leadership, inclusive recruitment, effective governance, diverse career paths, accessible learning and stakeholder engagement. They have been endorsed by Work 180 and were one of the top 101 employers for women in Australia in 2022. Their Reconciliation Action Plan was endorsed by Reconciliation Australia in 2022 as well, and they have targets for both women and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander percentage in the workforce linked directly to their sustainable finance. We thank Port of Newcastle for their ongoing commitment to diversity and inclusion, and of course the use of this space today to celebrate the International Day for Women in Maritime. The Port of Newcastle are also proud supporters of the Newcastle Jets football team. I'd like to welcome Newcastle Jets women's captain Cassidy Davis to the stage to say a few words.
So just while Cassidy's coming forward, my name's Shane Matisky. I'm the Executive Chairman of the Newcastle Jets, and I'll tell you a little bit about Cassidy's background in football. But firstly, I wanted to thank you for allowing us to be part of this function. The Jets themselves have been an organisation that's been here since the late 1800s and a big part of this community, but we recognise how important the maritime industry here is to this community, and we're very excited to be part of that industry through our connection and major partnership with the Port of Newcastle. Importantly, the Port of Newcastle have partnered with us really to support the community, but they made it very clear to us in that partnership that they wanted to support women's football, and that is a very important part of this region. 29% of all our participants in this region, and it leads the country really, are female, and I think that's a really important thing, and it shows the way the sport's developed, and I know Port of Newcastle is supportive of that space. I know they're supportive of the goal here today about recognising the role of women within the maritime services industry. So it's great to be here. We wanted to make a little presentation. Cassidy is our captain. She's been our captain over the last few years, but importantly, she's a leader for our young females. We have a young female academy that goes from the age of under 13 through to seniors. She's a player that's been in this community her whole career, but importantly, she leads the way in terms of one very important record, which is she has played 129 games straight, right, since the age of debut at age 18. And so has not missed a game from injury, form, or suspension, which is important. And I think that is a record across any male or female player in the A-League. And she's still going, so round of applause. And so I think I'll hand over to Cassidy, and she's going to make a little presentation to Neil.
Yeah, thanks for having Shane and myself here. Proud supporters of Port of Newcastle, and on behalf of our team, we'd like to thank them for their ongoing support, especially of our women's team. We'd just like to present a signed women's jersey to the Port of Newcastle and to Neil. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane, Cassidy and Neil, thank you. I'm now going to hand over to our host for this afternoon's panel discussion and live Q&A, Monika Lemajic. Monika is WISTA Australia's president and has worked in the ship repair and sustainment industry since she was 19. She spent the majority of her career working at Garden Island Dockyard as a naval technical architect and assistant dockmaster, where she then went on to work in operational strategy and project management. Monika is now a senior manager of maritime assets with the Transport for New South Wales, where she is responsible for an extensive portfolio of maritime assets across New South Wales. Monika also has a passion for education, upskilling, social justice, including community impact in her decision making. Welcome, Monika.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm very overwhelmed with the level of participation here, so sorry if I get a little bit excited. Just a reminder, we do have, for everyone in the room, there's a QR code if you have any questions. If you're online, check your emails, the Slido link, or the QR code is for the Slido link. So ask questions and we'll answer all your questions at the end. So, diversity, what is it? It is the presence of difference in our industry. And specifically today, we're maritime industry and we're talking about gender diversity. Inclusion, what is it? It's about belonging. It's about, regardless of your differences, how you feel that you belong. Our statistics that you've been seeing up on the screens, it's showing 1.2% of female seafarers. It's showing up to 10% of female participation in port roles. And even in the traditional female roles, it's showing 17% of female participation in the traditional gender female roles. So, do you think those people feel included? Do you think that they feel like they belong? I'll leave that all to you to have a think about. But what I want to say to you is that how do you think that it feels to be that 1%? I know how it feels. When I first started, I was one female in a drawing office of 100 men. One female. That I'll give you a bit of a background. So recently I met up with a coach. She was a leadership coach back in a previous role, back in the dockyard. And she said to me, "Why did you become WISTA Australia president?" And I said, "Do you remember back in the day when you used to coach me and I told you I felt alone?" And she said, "Stop, Monika. You didn't feel alone. I saw you. You were alone." So could you imagine that moment? Even 8 years on after that, it hit me. I was alone. And I hated people feeling like that. I hated that feeling. So I became WISTA Australia president, so nobody ever felt alone. I changed that narrative for myself. I no longer was that one person standing by myself. Look at the room. We have over 300 participants around the world today. And this is the first time we're celebrating it. Like, this is amazing. Like, it's just so overwhelming for me. But let me tell you, I said, how do you think that feels to be that person? You know when you watch a movie and it's usually like New York, there's someone just standing there and there's like hustle and bustle and everyone's walking past and shoveling past and you can't see the other people, but you have that singular person standing there and they're not seen and they're not heard. That's exactly what it feels like. And we don't want people to feel like that. I don't want to feel like that, and I don't ever want anyone to feel like that. So we need to change the narrative. Today is about collaboration. Today is about celebration. And that's exactly what we're all here to do. We're here to mobilise networks for gender equality. And I'm so proud of how far we've come. I'm so proud of everyone in the room, everyone online for participating and recognising that this is required for change. We have an absolutely outstanding group here who are going to tell us their stories. And I want you all to remember my point. Inclusivity is about feeling belonging. It is hard to public speak, and it's definitely hard to share your personal story. And today, when we listen to the stories, we're going to act with kindness and compassion, and we're going to hear what they have to say and take their messages and see how we can move forward. Today is not a finger-pointing exercise. It is not about that we only have 1.2%. It's how do we increase that to get to 50% or to whatever percentage it's going to be. This is about equality, and this is about moving forward, everyone. So, are we ready? Our first presentation is Emma. Emma is the people lead from Svitzer, and I would like you to give you a brief introduction for yourself and your message today.
Thank you so much, Monika. Tough act to follow. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Emma Yabsley. I'm lead people and culture business partner at Svitzer Australia. I don't have a seafaring background, but I've worked in the maritime industry since 2011. I actually grew up in the mid-north coast, New South Wales, and on the water, spent a lot of time in the water. I would have loved to have thought a maritime career was a possibility, but sadly, when I was in high school, I didn't even know such a career path existed. So I took the path usually or most travelled by a lot of young Australians, and I went off to university. I studied business, and I went on a working holiday overseas. And during that working holiday, I came across a rather big shipping company called Maersk. And I started working with them in human resources and working with a lot of international seafarers. And that was a fantastic experience and really opened up my eyes to how wonderful the maritime industry really is, whether you're on the water or you're supporting on the shore side. So in 2017, decided to come back to Australia, and I thought that could be the end of my maritime industry experience, but luckily I was able to continue it with Svitzer Australia. And for those that don't know Svitzer, harbour and terminal towage, also lines business. You can see us in many ports around Australia and around the world as well. You might have seen us out of the window today here in Newcastle, where we are the largest employer of seafarers in Australia outside of the Navy, and that's something that we're really proud of, and proud of the communities that we're involved in. With that, I think also comes responsibility in terms of the maritime industry and trying to increase women in maritime. Being in human resources, it's really hard for me to hear stories like Monika's talking about people feeling alone at work. I don't want that. I know the team that I work with absolutely don't want that. I'm sure everyone here doesn't want that. So we certainly all need to work together to try and overcome this and try and increase gender diversity in our amazing industry. How do we do that? It's a question I've been asked. There's a lot of barriers that have prevented us so far and preventing us today. And I think we all need to come together to try and overcome those barriers. But what are they? Why aren't women drawn to maritime? I think in general, the maritime industry doesn't get a lot of press, doesn't get a lot of attention. Most people don't know about it. I mean, it's quite prominent in a location like Newcastle, but a lot of other locations around Australia, it's actually not prominent and not an obvious career path, regardless of your gender. So I think in general, we have a lot of work to do as a community to try and raise the profile of the maritime industry in general, and then also raise the profile for it specifically for women. Why aren't women attracted to it? I think there's a number of reasons. One, I think, is the workplace culture. At present, I mean, that experience Monika just spoke to, it is quite daunting. You can walk pretty much on any vessel in Australia, and the majority of the crew will be male, if not all of them. It's been described to me by some candidates, unfortunately, as a bit of a boys' club, and quite intimidating. There's also other workplace cultural challenges. I genuinely, and I'm amazed, have candidates say to me, "Oh, it is possible to go work for you. You don't have to be a friend or family member." No. It is absolutely possible. We encourage applications. There's also myths about experience required to come and join us. And I think that deters a lot of young people and certainly a lot of females as well. There's myths that, you could only come and work if you've had more than 10 years experience in blue water or offshore or things like that. That experience is amazing and absolutely welcomed in our organisation. But we make clear we're welcoming people from all backgrounds, all experiences. There's a lot of different aspects of the maritime industry, and each of them bring amazing skills that would be useful in organisations like our own. In terms of other barriers and challenges, I mean, the big one is the lack of females, lack of mentors. You can't be what you can't see. So we have certainly been putting a lot of effort in to try and highlight that you can be a female seafarer. And it's amazing, we have people in our network that it might not be the most comfortable thing for them to do, but they feel it's important to show other young people that it is possible. And certainly all organisations, I think, need to work on that to promote and show that it absolutely is. There's a lot of bias, I think, unfortunately, still in the industry. A lot of it is unconscious bias. I don't think it's intentional, but it's difficult to say. But I've heard comments like, you can't, I don't think we can recruit her. I don't think she's strong enough to have a job, or experienced enough, or things to that effect. And I think it's important on us when we hear statements like that to call them out and to challenge people's biases and gender stereotypes. Women are working maritime today, can work in maritime today, and there's no place for those kind of statements in our workplaces anymore. Other barriers, lack of flexible work practices. So it's 24/7 operation in the maritime industry, and with that is shift work, night shifts, often long stretches away from family, things like that. This is quite a barrier, and I think it's up to employers and all of us to work together to see what flexibility can we offer in that space to try and encourage females to come and work with us. I think we need to be more creative and more willing to offer part-time positions, or be accommodating of women who can only work at certain times due to, for example, family responsibilities. It might not have been the way we've always done it, but I think if we are to move forward and to increase these percentages, we need to think differently and do things like that going forward. Other barriers I think that we have is in terms of recruitment as well. I think just little things you can do can help remove some of those barriers. So for example, just a very small thing we've done in our organisation, but it has had a huge impact, and I'm happy to share with the group and encourage you all to do it, is just putting like an excerpt in your job ad. Well, firstly, put out a job ad, put it out widely. That hasn't always actually happened. So for all our maritime roles, put the adverts out. Encourage as many people as possible to apply. Then I also encourage you to put in a section in your advert. If you don't meet all the criteria in that advert, we still welcome your application. We would still love to hear from you. Maybe you still could be right for this role, or if not for this role, perhaps others. The amount of feedback I've received that has encouraged people to apply that wouldn't have otherwise has been really fantastic. So I think that's just a small but concrete example of something that we can do. Other barriers that we have, sometimes we have industrial barriers as well. We have sometimes barriers in our awards or enterprise agreements that place restrictions on recruitment or qualifications. I think we should all jointly work together to make sure that there's nothing in any of these instruments that would limit diversity. We have a very small pool of female candidates. I think we should all work together to make sure that pool isn't any smaller. And then finally, I think a big barrier and something that we need to make sure we overcome is leadership in this area. A HR department can't move that number by itself. For this number to increase, we need the executive leadership in our organisations to be right behind this and cascade that all the way down to our front leaders, and each and every one of us are a leader in this space. As I said, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. We all need to work together to be leaders in this space and overcome these barriers and see an increase in gender diversity.
Thank you. Thank you for the pointers on the moving forward part too. It's really important for us to all know how do we fix those, because it's new. We don't always know how to do it. So really great. Our next speaker is Di. Di's from AMSA. She is the Maritime Safety and Data Policy Manager, Domestic Manager. Take it away, Di.
Thanks.
Share us your story.
Okay. Part of me wants to move up there and hide behind the lectern.
You're amazing. I've heard you speak. You're amazing.
I'll give it a crack. So, hello everyone. As Monika said, I'm Di Smith and I'm the Manager for Domestic Maritime Safety and Data Policy within the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet today and their connections to land, sea and community. I pay my respect to the elders, past, present, as well as the continuation of cultural, spiritual and educational practices of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Since beginning in the maritime industry some 18 months ago, I've come to realise just how naive I was on the issue of gender equity. I've spent much of my career sheltered in the Commonwealth Public Service where women outnumbered men on a ratio of around 60 to 40. And while I have always championed diversity and inclusion, it wasn't until I joined AMSA that I really understood just how underrepresented women are in the maritime industry. So I ask you to picture this. You've just entered a room full of people, not unlike the one we're in today. You're at a maritime conference. There are all these amazing presenters talking of opportunities and innovations that will deliver better safety outcomes, better environmental outcomes. You glance around the room and you realise you are one of only 2 women at the conference, and the other one is your colleague who's giving one of the presentations. This is sadly unsurprising, given women represent just 1.2% of the seafarer workforce worldwide. But it's hard to imagine a profession that has a greater gender imbalance, and that's why we're here today. As the regulator for maritime safety and a member of the Council of the International Maritime Organisation, we at AMSA are making a concentrated effort to lead by example, to address the gender gap and focus our role as a convener and influencer of the maritime sector to ensure that we create space and visibility for women. We are striving to encourage more women to come, to stay and to lead our industry. We cannot be what we cannot see. AMSA's journey towards diversity and inclusion commenced in around 2018 when a group of passionate staff members established our diversity working group. This group engages in work related to gender, sexuality, disability, age, culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples, helping us to develop, implement and monitor AMSA's diversity and inclusion policies and initiatives. We launched our first diversity and inclusion plan in 2019 with the aim to increase representation of underrepresented groups, including women. In 2021, with strong executive support, we formed a gender equity working group made up of staff from across the organisation to understand how AMSA can best approach gender equity. The group identified that our staff had concerns about a lack of gender knowledge and the competency to address biases, and that they had uncertainty in being able to safely raise issues when they were experienced. The group reiterated that staff wanted effective gender equity training so that people understood why gender equity was important and how they could contribute to it. They also wanted leaders who would uphold diversity policies. They wanted support when they were experiencing family or domestic violence, and they wanted AMSA to embrace gender-neutral language. The Gender Equity Working Group used this information to build AMSA's Gender Equity Action Plan, which was released last year. The action plan establishes a clear pathway for us to work towards achieving gender equity. Whilst we may not be there yet, we are heading in the right direction. In the past year, AMSA has implemented a flexible working policy on an if not, why not basis, which better supports staff with carer responsibilities. More than half of our workforce now works flexibly, and we are one of the most flexible government agencies in Australia. We've rolled out unconscious bias training to all individuals with hiring responsibilities and are aware so that those that are doing the hiring are aware of the biases that negatively impact women. We've begun removing gendered language from our communications and are continuing to educate our staff on the importance of gender-neutral language. We have made available online gender inclusion courses for staff to deepen their understanding of gender diversity. We have implemented additional supports for people experiencing family and domestic violence, including increasing access to leave related to this. Just last year, we delivered over 42 training sessions across our organisation, educating staff on how to manage, navigate and report bullying, harassment and discrimination. This has seen an increase in staff calling out inappropriate behaviours. We have also established scholarships for women in the Indo-Pacific region to complete studies in maritime affairs. In addition, we have established a scholarship through the Australian Maritime College supporting women in engineering. In fact, we were able to offer the opportunity for our past scholarship recipient, Samantha, to join us here today. And last but not least, in November last year, we were designated an inclusive employer by the Diversity Council of Australia. An incredible honour, as we were one of only 4 government agencies that was listed, showing we are both leading in both our sector and across the nation. As of today, AMSA has increased the representation of women in our organisation to 44%, a number we are determined to continue to grow. But achieving gender equity takes time and effort. The results will be worth it. I hope our journey can inspire yours. And if I can leave you with a few pieces of advice, don't be afraid to speak up for change. Encourage your senior leaders to champion the cause. Listen to your staff and your colleagues and learn what is important to them. Make a plan and hold people accountable to achieve gender diversity, and enlist the help of a diverse group of people from across your organisation. Thank you, and I wish you all good luck on your journeys, your gender equity journeys.
That was amazing, and you did amazing. Great story and great ideas. Like, this is what we need. We need ideas on how to progress, and it's fantastic. Our next speaker is Elise, and she is the Deck Cadet for SeaRoad. So, share us your story, Elise.
Okay. Hi, my name is Elise, and I'm a Deck Officer Cadet for SeaRoad Shipping. When I first finished high school, I actually started in hospitality. I didn't really know that maritime was an industry that was an option for me, even though I had an uncle working in shipping and 2 other family members working in port. It never really occurred to me that that was something that I could or wanted to do. I did a hospitality management degree where my last internship was on a whale watch boat. I loved being on the water, and I ended up asking the owner if I could please do my deckhand course so I could do some more shifts on the water, which he agreed to, and I took on more and more shifts on the water and finished my degree, but actually realised that that wasn't really what I wanted to continue with. I loved being on the water, and I wanted to continue my career in that. I continued working as a deckhand on a few different boats, and eventually I ended up on the ferry here in Newcastle Harbour as a deckhand. I was awarded the Barker Scholarship by TAFE to get my Master 5 and MED 3 to be able to also drive the ferry, which from there on I wanted to do more, and I ended up starting my cadetship, doing my pre-C at the AMSA in Tasmania, and starting as a deck cadet on the boats for SeaRoad. SeaRoad has a strong commitment to making their workforce more diverse and to employ candidates who are the best for the job, regardless of their gender. We have women working in all areas in the business, from stevedoring to logistics to management to shipping. At the moment, we've got 4 women working on the boats, 1 IR, 2 deck officer cadets, and 1 trainee IR. At the moment, we're still a minority, but I'm hoping and I'm hopeful to see more of us join in the future. I remember actually feeling quite excited the first time I saw one of the girls in the dockyard driving a plant marine machine. So it's good to see that change. I would just like to talk about why the maritime industry is a good career path for all people. Firstly, why I love what I do is because I love being on the water and the challenges that it brings. Every boat, every ship is different, and you never really stop learning. You also learn so many different skills, because when you're on the water, you're pretty much it. If there's an emergency or an incident, you're the one that's got to deal with it. There's no one else to help you. So you learn practical skills, like even just painting and welding and maintenance and cleaning, to you need to know how to fight fires and provide medical aid and how to survive at sea. You also get the chance to operate machinery and technical equipment, and how to navigate and manoeuvre a ship or a boat. But you could also be learning management skills like planning and managing people. All these skills come in handy in any other job as well, even if you later on decide to change careers. And even off the water, there are many different pathways to choose from, such as port and ship management, logistics, naval architecture, surveying, safety management, and so on. It's a very diverse industry with a long and interesting history. And for young people especially, I think it's a great opportunity to travel and see the world, meet people from different cultures, different backgrounds. When you're living at sea, you learn to live and appreciate people that you would normally not have that much in common with. It becomes your family away from home. And I think that the more diverse we can make these families, the more open and accepting they're going to be. Working at sea does not have to stop once you decide to have kids either. At the moment, I am 21 weeks pregnant and I'm still going to sea. Fathers work away from home, so why can't mothers? And so I'm living proof that you can have a family and be at sea. I've already have a 3-year-old and I'm pregnant with my second. I have to admit that I was a little bit hesitant to start my cadetship because I already had a child and I knew I wanted more and I didn't know how I was going to navigate that. Then someone very wise told me that you just cross that bridge when you get to it and just do what you want to do and then deal with it when it comes, which is the best advice I've ever been given because I'm glad I actually started doing this. It's not been easy. I've had some difficulties along the way, which is not any different to anyone else in any other industry. I don't think that's specific to maritime. There's going to be challenges wherever you go. And to be honest, I actually love being challenged. It gives me a reason to work harder and challenge myself and improve myself. It's a great feeling once you've accomplished something, and I also love proving people wrong. One of the things that also helped with this is that SeaRoad is actually sponsoring my studies and I'm also getting paid, which is essential for me to be able to still provide for my family and pay my mortgage while also advancing in my career. There's not many university degrees out there where you can get paid instead of building up a debt. And for anyone that is thinking of joining this industry, one of the things that I think is really important is to find yourself a mentor, especially when you're part of a minority. It is so important to find someone that you can relate to, someone that can sympathise with you, that you can share your experiences with and can get advice from. For me, it was really important to see other women working in the industry, especially see women do what I wanted to do, because it confirmed for me that, yeah, I can actually, this is something that I can, this is possible. Before I went to sea, I was desperate to find someone that had a child that was still going to sea. I just needed that confirmation that, yes, I can actually, this is something that I can do, this is possible. And it gave me that, once I actually started looking, I realised that there's more of us than I initially thought, and it gave me the strength to keep going. And I also think that events like today are so important because it can give people the confidence that they may need or that they have been looking for to continue. And one of the biggest things that drives me to keep going is the group of women that I know in the industry. and I keep getting to know more and more women, which is amazing. We can talk to each other about our experiences, laugh and cry together, and not feel so alone. And together we can break through glass ceilings and make the pathways clearer and easier for the next people to join. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. One of the key points that you did mention was mentoring, and since today is about collaboration, if anyone in the room or online is looking for a mentor, I know multiple organisations, including Nautical Institute, PIANC, WISTA. There's a lot of people out there that are willing to help. So please reach out to myself, WISTA Australia, whoever you need to, and I will make sure that you connect. And that is for everyone. That is not gender specific. So whatever you identify as, please contact me. You're all welcome. It's about belonging, inclusive connection today. So yeah, please reach out. Our final speaker. Yay! Mich-Elle Myers from MUA, National Officer, our National Officer. Could you please share your story?
I'd love to, thank you. Thanks, I'd also like to acknowledge that we're on Aboriginal land and pay my respects to elders past and present, and hope that the people in this room will walk with us on the journey to a yes vote for the referendum coming up this year to support. And while there is no justice for Aboriginal people, there is, it's time to do that. So my name is Mich-Elle Myers. I'm the National Women's Liaison Officer of the Maritime Union. I was a wharfie, a stevedore. In '99, I started at Patrick's Stevedores as one of the first 3 women stevedores out there. There was other women in stevedoring at the time, but just not at that port. And I was just talking to the other sister that started with me, Marlene, before I walked in this room, and she works in WA now at DP World. So she's still in the industry as well, and Sally that started with us isn't. Being one of the first 3, oh, good, thank you. It's not to do with my hands. So being one of the first 3 stevedores at Patrick's Port Botany, the 3 of us and 426 guys was really, really interesting. It was terrifying, in fact, and being that only person in the room that you spoke of and the stories that we've heard, we know that feeling, and it's quite extraordinary. I was very, very nervous walking into that workplace on the first day, and then someone yelled at me the moment I walked in there, and I realised why I was nervous, because they were not used to working with women. They didn't want it. They didn't want change, and so they were angry, and I was nervous. So it was kind of odd place to be, but it didn't stay that way very long. We've got a very inclusive membership of our union who are like a family. So you kind of get your mentors from those workplaces. And one of the delegates, took me under his wing, and within about 3 days I was on the site committee, elected as a delegate. So because we've got women here now, we better have a woman on the committee, was what he said. So off we go. But walking into a place like that, like you said before, I don't want people to feel like that anymore. Most of those workplaces now have a lot of women working at them, except for Patrick's Fremantle is the only container terminal in the country that doesn't have women working there. They have had women apply. They just don't get through. They don't get interviews. One didn't even get a call back or a response to her application saying that they received it. So it's time for... This is the opportunity that we have now, and days like this allow us to have that conversation and bring these issues to the forefront. I think the narrative for women in the country has shifted considerably, and I think probably in the last year or so, year and a half or so, and it takes horrific stories that bring issues of women in the workplace to light, such as the things that were happening in Parliament House in Canberra, and stories like that bring the issues up to make us realise what is going on and what we need to do to change it. And I think implementing the Sex Discrimination Commissioner's report, 55 recommendations, the Respect at Work report, implementing those is a very big step. In ratifying the ILO Convention C190, elimination of violence against violence and harassment in the world of work. All of these things are steps forward to make sure that we have workplaces and employers are responsible. There's now a positive duty on employers to make sure that they remove sexual discrimination in the workplace. But let's take it a step back first too, though. If there's workplaces that don't have women, like, don't just have that as a target for, you know, you've got to get women into the industry or you've got to get women into that workplace. Get all the stuff ready for it. You know, have you got the facilities? Have you got bathrooms? And yes, it's 2023, and 2 weeks ago I was still talking about a worksite that doesn't have a women's bathroom. It's not that hard. You know, it's really simple. But getting systems into place such as parental leave, pregnancy policy, write it before you employ women, get it all ready to go. Industrial instruments, make sure you've got the flexibility in there for pregnancy and what happens after the 22 weeks, 23 weeks, you know, where do we go now? What arrangements are you going to have in place with your employer? Do all that stuff, get it all ready. We run a conference called WIMDOI. You may have heard about us, but it's Women in Male-Dominated Occupations and Industries. That's why we shorten it to WIMDOI. But it is a conference that, I mean, many, many years ago, the Australian Council of Trade Unions was running women's conferences, and we're all sitting in the room going, doesn't relate to us, because it wasn't about people like us that sit in a room or sit on a ship or sit in a work site, that they're the only one. So we created this conference 23 years ago, and it runs every 2 years, and we have women come there that are just like us. Tradies, you know, underground coal miners, fireys, all of these people that are the same as us and have those same issues, and they all walk around that room and they go, oh my God, I'm not the only one, like you were saying. And they find their people and they find a network of support. And we're still in a, you know, last year's conference had over 200 people in Canberra, and we're still in a WhatsApp group. And yesterday somebody said, can you find me this policy for blah, 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 you know, whatever it is. So that network continues. Growing those things and working together with organisations like WISTA and building that relationship and strengthening those networks is really important, and we want to continue to do that. Sorry, my mouth's really dry. The other thing I wanted to say is about our union, and I think we have a unique perspective because they often, people that have issues at work will ring us first. They won't go to the employer or HR or something. Not many people ring me to say, g'day Mich-Elle, how you going? Having a good day? They usually ring and go, Mich-Elle, I've got this issue. Something's happened. And we hear it first. I think we need to work closer. Employers need to work closer with us about how to respond to issues in the workplace and how to recruit and how to find the people that are suitable for the job, because, like you said, nobody knows what, you know, whether you could go to sea or not. It never occurred to you that you could go. I think bringing friends and family is important because they do know the industry. I think stevedoring as well is unique in the fact that of the shift work and the physical labour and same as seafaring. If you have your sisters, your daughters, your aunties coming in, they already know what the job is. They know what the shift work is like. They know half of the people that work there because you've worked there for 20 years with them. I think that creates that bond and that strengthens the family and the workplace out there as well. So don't discount bringing your sisters and your mothers and daughters onto the workplace because I think that really does help, because it is one big family in Maritime, isn't it? Everybody knows everybody. And I think that's great. And I want to just say shout out to the Maritime women that are here from my union, and some that I haven't seen for a very long time. Rachel, good to see you. But it's a unique industry, and when you're talking about not knowing that you can go and have a career in this industry, there was a video many years ago that the British government did, I think, and it was about, you know, you can't be what you can't see. And asked these little kids in this preschool to draw a fighter pilot, a jet pilot, a doctor, and another one, can't remember. And then they all drew, every single one of these kids drew, you know, a man, except for one kid. Go you. And then they brought them in, you know, the fighter pilot and the doctor and whatever, and they were all women. And the kids were just like, oh, That's not real. They're all just dressing up. But, you know, that's the sort of things that we need to do. We need to actually show that to kids that age, because that's when you decide what you want to be. I didn't decide I wanted to be a wharfie at 3, but I'm so proud. I was a bank manager and then a bus driver and a wharfie, so it's been quite the journey to get here. But I think just showing people and young kids that they can be absolutely anything is really, really important. But showing them our industry, I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? Mm-hmm. Who wouldn't want to go out there on Newcastle Harbour and bring in a ship? But just make sure we get our settings right before we encourage more, or encourage any. If it's your first, you know, get your policies in place. Make sure we're ready to go. Get some bathrooms. And talk to us and talk to the women that are in the industry about uniforms and boots and, yeah, seeing rolling eyes. I mean, come on, it's not that hard. My crutch doesn't need to go down here, and your boots don't fit me. I'm sorry, they just don't. So let's collaborate on that. Come and ask us the questions before, and so we can get it right. That's all I'm going to say.
I really love that. So all of us today, one of the key themes is we've all been told we can't in some way. So I got told women can't dock ships. No. And I became really successful at it. I'm the first female dockmaster in Australia, like Commonwealth accredited. So I was really good at it, you know. They're not just going to let me dock warships. So women can. Everyone can. It's really possible. Great stories. And I really love the ways of moving forward, like what can we do, which is absolutely fantastic. So we do have some questions for each of the panel members, and then we're going to go to everyone here. So get your questions ready. Everyone online, please get your Slido ready, and we'll start with that. Okay, so the first question is for Elise. Yep. So there is a genuine commitment to advancing gender equality in maritime, yet progress is still rather slow. What has been the pitfalls in your workplace when attempting to improve diversity, equity and inclusion, and what could we learn from it?
It's kind of already been mentioned that in a lot of male-dominated jobs, you kind of always feel a little bit like a visitor, like it's only temporary. You're only here to just have a go, have a look. Like overalls, harnesses, they're all designed for the male body. And even though there is, I'm pretty sure there is harnesses for women, but usually it's the men's ones that are available in workplaces. And even face masks, like the ones on breathing apparatus for firefighting, they're usually designed for the male head. So I heard a recent story of a lady who was training to become a firefighter, and they were training with a real fire, and she could not get her mask to seal properly and kept on obviously breathing in smoke and panicking, and she ended up giving up her training, which is really, really sad if that's the only reason why you have to give up. On ships, it seems to be the norm that there's only one change room. So as a woman, you just have to kind of get creative and find your own way to get changed. It's just those little things that keep reminding you that you weren't actually meant to be there. Another thing in my own experience from being pregnant, I remember being really, really nervous both times to tell my employer that I was pregnant. Mainly based on stories I've heard from other women in other jobs over the industry. I didn't know what was going to happen, if I was going to lose my job, if I was going to be able to go back out to sea again. Lucky for me, SeaRoad was really supportive of me and listened to what I wanted to do, and which is I want to continue working at sea and I want to continue my cadetship, which is what I'm doing. But overall, I think in the maritime industry, I think maritime is lacking the confidence in dealing with women's health appropriately. There haven't been too many women out at sea yet, let alone pregnant women. So, of course, this is still a little bit of a new territory. But if we're going to see more women in maritime, we're also going to be seeing more pregnant women in maritime that want to continue working at sea. One of the good examples is Netball Australia. They've got a really good pregnancy policy, which is a modern take on pregnancy, where they don't actually consider pregnancy more like an illness. So when you look at their policy, it's up to the pregnant person and their obstetrician to decide what they can and can't do. Whatever they're comfortable with is what should be done. Hang on, sorry. And I believe a similar approach could be used in the maritime industry. Having periods, having fertility issues, pregnancy, having families, it's all part of our very existence as people. And I think our workplaces should reflect that. If the medical care on board ships is not equipped for women's health, then maybe we should change this by adding it into our medical training. I'm not saying that we're all going to have to become obstetricians or gynecologists. I'm just thinking a basic understanding of women's health and pregnancy would be a really good start.
That's a really good point. So I was talking to the International Chamber of Shipping last night. This is a quick side note. And they were telling me that, over COVID, we had seafarers stuck out at sea for, 2 years. And our poor women they only took sanitary items for 1 to 2 months. And then so for the remainder of the time, they were a little bit stuck without. So basic things, the medical department and the ship could store something, help out. And also special bins in women's toilets are real things. Keynote. Been there. Had those conversations. Yeah.
Oh, it's Jane.
For those online, there's a tug tooting and doing a U-turn for us.
It's our female master.
It's the Svitzer female master. What's her name?
Hogar.
Jane Hogar. Thank you for the show.
Women can do this.
Good to know. So we do have time. We want to get to drinks. So let me kick on with the next question. The next question is for Di. We all have unconscious biases. It is the way that we live and the way we were raised, the way we've learnt to interact. But how do we think unconscious bias plays out in our workplaces? And how can we address this?
Thanks, Monika. It's a really good question. Unconscious bias, by definition, is unconscious. We don't realise we're doing it, we're not aware of it, and therein lies the problem. We need to actually make it conscious. And I actually have a really good example of it playing out in the workplace quite recently for me with my team. It's a simple example, but it does paint a picture. I was doing a bit of a get to know you exercise with my team, and the exercise was to list a unique fact about yourself that no one in the team knew, and we put them all into a hat and drew them out, and the exercise was for the team to then identify which fact belonged to which person. And one of the facts that came out was I worked as a housemaid in a hotel in Broome, and noting that I actually do have a reasonably good gender balance in my team, it's not too far off 50-50. I watched this play out, and the team all started pointing the finger at the females in the group. And in fact, I was mindful of this, having done unconscious bias training, and so I threw a male name into the mix, and I bet you can all imagine what happened. There was a burst of laughter from the group. And then that name was disregarded, and there was a unanimous vote for one of the females in the team. And I think watching that happen, it was a bit of, we wanted to win, right? They wanted to get it right. They wanted to, everyone wanted to be, we got it, we worked it out. But in fact, it was one of the males in the team. And the male in the team that had put his name in there and had put his experiences working as a housemaid in Broome into the mix, had known that was how it was going to play out. He played into that unconscious bias. And in fact, he felt that he won because they didn't catch him. But as I said, it paints a picture of how unconscious bias happens. It happens every day in the workplace. It happens every day in what we do. It's when we ask a male to lift a heavy box. It's when we expect the female to organise the Christmas lunch. We all do it, and the only way for us to address it is to call it, to name it, put a name on it and say, well, hang on a second, pause. Have I made an assumption here? Because it's those assumptions that cause us to continually perpetuate the issue.
I think following on from your presentation as well, it also takes, well, all the presentations, it takes leadership. So, when someone used to ask me to go get the coffees, it should have been my manager to say, no, she's here to do the docking calculations. She's not here to get the coffees. So just be conscious of that too, that it's really difficult when you are put in that situation and it's a bit scary and you don't quite know how to act. So sometimes it takes a second person to just call out and be like, no, actually that person's not meant to do that. And that's regardless of gender. That's just, no, that's not their role. Yeah. So, great answer. Next one is for Emma. So Emma, what are the actions that the maritime industry and employers can do right now that would improve gender diversity in our maritime workplaces? You had some great ideas before, so really keen to hear what you're going to continue on with.
Yeah, I think I've already mentioned quite a few of them, but there are some concrete and tangible actions we can all implement immediately. Recruitment is a big one. Ensuring we recruit far and wide, ensuring that females are part of the shortlist and get a chance to interview and be considered for roles. I think making sure our adverts are worded appropriately and attract the right people as well. One thing we haven't touched on so far and something we're doing to an extent, but we want to do more, is the engagement of young people. So we're doing a lot of school-based work experience. I think that's something we could all do more of. Just a week in grade 10 can make a big impact on somebody's life and career choices. So it's something I think is relatively easy to facilitate and it can definitely help in that space. We're also looking to do more, so for example, school-based traineeships as well, to try and, I guess, foster more people entering our industry and getting that, catching them early. We've already spoken a lot about leadership, so I just echo that, and the community engagement events like this are so important. Really proud of a lot of my colleagues from Newcastle that are here today that have been manning a stall at the Career Expo. And just, things like that will certainly raise our profile in the industry and make an impact on young people's lives and hopefully steer them to our industry. So I think that's great. I think we need to do more of that. And I think it would be fantastic if more of us in the industry perhaps could partner together to do more of that as well.
Love that. Love that. Because we are seeing a workforce shortage. We have been speaking about that today. So this is a great way just to increase participation in general as well. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Yep. Okay, so last question before we come to the room for questions, okay? So start thinking, everyone. So the last question is for Mich-Elle. And the question is, what types of training have been offered or have you seen being offered about psychological safety, workplace bullying? No, that's not your question at all. Scrap that. That's not a question. For anyone in the room, the question is, does your organisation have a diversity, equity and inclusion committee that shadow or advise on strategies that will improve workplace culture and behaviours? Sorry about my
Okay, I can answer both.
Go for it.
Yeah, so as an organisation itself, the MUA, yes, we have. We actually have a National Women's Committee, we have a National Youth Committee and a National Indigenous Committee, and we have most recently made a change to the constitution of our union that has added 2 assistant national secretary positions. One must be a woman, one must be Indigenous, and that is going through our union elections right now. And we have, over many, many years, we have had policies of the union which make sure that there is a woman on negotiating committees, site committees, OH&S committees, everywhere where the decisions are being made, there's a woman. And that's so they should be. Can I just touch on the unconscious bias stuff?
Absolutely.
Because, and you just have to tell some of these stories, and we've all got a billion of them, but we were negotiating the Patrick's EBA, which is my workplace, in 2000, and I was with Thomas Mayo. So he was the Indigenous rep, I was the women's rep. There was 40 blokes around the table, and something needed to be photocopied, and it was handed past 5 blokes to me. Oh. I went, what just happened then? And are your arms broken was the next question. But yeah, so it happens all the time, and we've all got a million stories. So just be conscious of what you're doing.
Yeah. So I think that every point that was made here today, so my blunder about psychological safety, it is actually really important, because all these little things that we're talking about here today will actually make the bigger picture change, or make everything change. And this is what psychological safety is about. So sometimes we can be progressive, but sometimes we still don't feel that way. So this is really, really important, especially as we start to progress in our journey. So, does anyone have a question from the audience?
Thank you. Thank you to the panel. Hello. Thank you so much to the wonderful panellists. It's just been inspiring, a little bit emotional listening to you, but thank you so much for presenting to us today. So you've spoken about 3 main things to get more women into the industry. So attraction, recruitment and retention. Retention being, Mich-Elle, that you talked about, having the workplace ready to take this influx of women. I want to pose a question to you about corporate will. And so all of these things that we've spoken about, they can happen today. So why aren't we doing it?
Does anyone have an answer?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think they are happening today. A lot of those actions that we've talked about, we are implementing, but it's certainly not going from 0 to 100. I don't think it can. But we, a lot of those concrete examples I've mentioned are things certainly in my organisation are implementing today, and I see many others as well. It is a challenge. I think part of that challenge is the candidate pool from which we're trying to seek is so small as well. The number of certified seafarers that are female is an incredibly small pool from which to draw on, and something we need to increase. But yeah, certainly all those things we can do, and we're starting to do now.
Did you want to?
I think we need to speed up this process as quickly as possible. I mean, if we're going to have more Australian ships with the Australian Red Ensign on the back of them, the outcome of the Australian Strategic Fleet Task Force, I think we are going to have to move very fast, because we are highly skilled in seafaring as well, and it takes a long time to get those certifications. We need to step it up right now as quickly as possible, find berth spaces as well, and start getting people trained, and make sure we've got quotas in there.
I've got something.
Off you go.
Yeah.
Me too.
I know that when I was looking for a cadet ship, a lot of shipping companies actually don't even really put ads out that there's jobs available. You kind of have to know someone else who knows someone, and then they give you an email, and you just send them a cold email, and you may or may not hear something back. And I think for businesses, it's not enough to just say, yes, we want to hire more women. Like, don't just put on your ad, we're looking for women. I don't think that's, because that's actually, I've actually noticed a negative impact on that, because now whenever women get a job, they get told, oh, but you only got that job because you're a woman, because they're only hiring women now. And that's sort of, in an industry where you already feel like you're not welcome and you're not actually part of the industry, to then also hear that you only got the job as a woman kind of makes you doubt your own abilities a little bit. And I think one of the things that businesses can improve is that there are so many platforms that women are part of, like Women in Maritime, WISTA, Indigenous groups. Like, you need to actually put your ads out in those platforms and not just put them out in the ones that you always put them out in, but actually like directly target the groups that you want to target. I think that would be beneficial. That's it.
And my 2 cents. So it's also about education. So people don't know what they don't know. So even like, I come from a very, very traditional background, and my brother's like, what do you do? Like, I don't get it. So, and it's not that he doesn't want to understand it. It's just, it's not how we grew up. It doesn't compute all the time. But he asks me some questions in his own way, but it is about education, and you don't know what you don't know. When I first started telling people the overalls don't fit me, they were like, why? They just didn't get it, and I didn't want to explain that my body shape is different. So it is about education, and it's also about having courage. So, now I would tell someone, look, it's because my body shape's different. But when I was 19, I didn't have the guts to tell anyone that. So it's about all of us advocating for each other and sharing stories and educating people to change, because that's the only way organisations, it's individuals who are in organisations that enable change. And that's my opinion. But yeah, great question. We have a question online.
Yes, we do. I'll relay it for you. So first of all, just a comment as well around, it would be great to have a hashtag or forums we can tag job opportunities on to increase the widening of the pool for people to see those. So maybe thinking about a really good hashtag to use. And probably jumping to one of the next questions, and we've touched on this a little bit already, but it was, how do you think we can improve visibility of the maritime industry in secondary education? Sometimes I think that really needs to go to primary. And do you think this would help increase women's participation?
For the person who said about the hashtag, that will be in our wrap-up. I can see notes being taken. We'll circle back. But for the question, do you want to just repeat the question once more?
Yeah, probably just for the panel, if anyone wanted to jump in just to add anything to what's already been discussed, but how could we do better to improve the visibility of Australia's maritime industry in secondary schools?
I think Emma kind of covered that really well when she talked about getting out there and putting out proposals to secondary schools to use maritime for Year 10 work experience. I think that's an excellent way we could start to make an inroad.
Yeah, like career expos, school work experience placements, school-based traineeships. These are all avenues to get secondary school students into our industry.
Yeah. Could I add one thing to that too? When I was at the Newcastle Careers Expo today, it was a really great opportunity to see the careers through the secondary school students' eyes, but what it showcased was there was only one stand there showing maritime, and yet if we could stretch that out more, talking about collaboration together to partner as a port like Newcastle and have Port of Newcastle and our service providers and Newcastle TAFE have them represented to show the pathways, because a lot of the questions that were being asked were, where do I get education? How do I get in? What is a GPH? You know, what is a deckhand? What are the different qualifications? So I think to come together as a community in our ports is a really great way, because I know our children were at Newcastle East Public, and they would hear ships' whistles, and their friends did not know about shipping or ports or maritime, and they saw and heard it every day. So I just add that bit. Any other questions from the room?
Working, is it? Okay. Oh no, there it is. Hello. Hello. If anyone wants to know what Monika does, they just have to listen to my podcast episode talking to her, because she does actually go through her career thing in that, which is the Boat Princess podcast. But because her brother doesn't know, I think her brother needs to listen to it as well. We've had 2 moments of talking about advertising positions. I'm from the recreational boating world, so we have a couple of marinas. I am a director on the Marina Industry Association. My husband is the president of ICOMIA, which is basically the president of the world of boating associations for recreational space. And we also are the first franchisee of Freedom Boat Club in Australia. So we're fairly heavily involved in the boating industry. And we experience similar things to yourselves. So what we've actually done in the recreational space, and what I hope you guys will join with us in, is a specific employment site for marine jobs, which is marinejobs.org.au. And it would be lovely to see your roles on there as well, because it's totally dedicated to that space of anything in maritime. So I think that's a really good one to add to that. And I had a moment when I tried to get a secondary school to us at the marina just to do a tour, and they wouldn't even do that. So we need the schools to be receptive to our offers of come and tour the marina, see what we do, the jobs here, because there are so many different roles in our space as well for women, in an incredible abundance of difference of roles. So I don't know if there's another way of approaching the schools, but we need some help, perhaps from government with that, or perhaps with career days or something. Oh, brilliant. Let's pass it over to her.
So not a question, just a quick no. There is actually some work being done in this space at the moment. So there's 2 organisations that are, I guess, have recognised this, and I had some discussions with them over the last few weeks around this as well. And AMSA are actually supporting one of them, which is SeaSafe. SeaSafe is mainly targeted at the seafood industry, and what it is, it's going to act as, I guess, a lobby for people to go to. So people in school, people looking to maybe have a career change, and they can go to this platform, and they're partnering with other organisations who aren't just seafood focused. So crude is one of them, so it acts as a point, like you said, for commercial jobs, but it also gives pathways. So how you can get to those points and what steps you need to take, as well as an education background on different avenues, because it's not just one way to enter the marine industry, and there's not just one point that you can get to. You don't need to be the smartest person in the class, and you don't need to, be technically minded, however it may be, but you can all get to the same point as long as you apply the effort over time. So that's what makes it really unique. But yeah, there is a lot of work happening in that space at the moment. They're not live. I think they're going live in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, there will be a lot of work and a lot of advertising that will happen once that takes place. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. And I guess answering that point that people have thought about is it is happening. It just takes time.
I'd love this collaboration in the room,
really
because
good
that's
to
what
hear.
it's about.
Am I passing this on to anyone else?
I just wanted to add something to that about recruitment, but also don't leave. If you're in the industry and it's not quite your niche, like you were saying before, I didn't want to quite keep doing that job, I'm going to go and retrain. But if seafaring's not your thing, don't leave. Reach out first somewhere, because there is, like you said, there's so many different jobs. If you don't want to go to sea, or if you just want to do, harbour work, or you want to go to be a wharfie, you could be. So, but don't leave without. If you're in the Navy, don't leave leave the industry altogether. Reach out to us and find your other place, because I think there's a bunch of places that you might want to go instead, and we'd hate to lose you.
Like I said before, we know people, so if you know anyone that has a question, no, just ask the question. That's how you progress. That's how you learn. Ask a question. Email WISTA and we'll connect you with who you need to connect to. If you just need advice, every time I ask for advice, there's so many people out there that are willing to just hear what you have to say and provide that guidance and advice. Doesn't matter where you are in your career. So please reach out and we'll do everything we can to support and help. We do have one more. We have time for one more question, and Janine looks like she's got something.
Actually, there's two more important ones, I think, from online. They're all important and they're all great, and I think we'll capture them and share them so people can offer any input. But importantly, there's two more. Do we have time for two more?
We have 5 minutes before Drew.
Okay. The first one I want to highlight is, and this is through the future generation, and I'm looking, as my daughter as an example here, she's keen on engineering, marine engineering. And if I look around at the roles within Maritime, where our deck representation's improving, our navigation side of things, but I really don't see the engineers, the marine engineers coming through. They might be in other areas around domestic commercial vessels, I'm not sure, but within the shipping piece, our marine engineers are still fairly unique. And I'd be really curious to see what can we do with STEM from the panel. Is there any great sparks of ideas for us to help improve our marine engineers? Because even through the maritime engineering qualifications, the numbers of engineers generally from the young people in marine are very low. So is there any ideas of what we can do to improve that?
I do have something. I know that one of the engineers on the vessel that I just came off, he mentioned that he actually offered to go to schools and do talks with students and give a presentation about what he does and try and get more people into engineering. So I think something like that would be really beneficial, especially if we could get women who are engineers to go to schools and actually do a talk of what they do and give other girls that like engineering and that think that's something that they want to do, that they see an example of, that's actually a pathway that I could choose.
One point that I have is that we don't always have to go to AMC. STEM is a broad range of, it doesn't have to be the Maritime College, so we can also reach out to local universities and ask them for support, because diversity of thought, let's increase participation however we can. So I'm more than happy to reach out to universities and ask the question.
And potentially targeted traineeships or something in that sector, because it is so poorly represented. A lot of concerted effort needs to be done in that space. Thank you.
Did you want to add something?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to make a quick awkward plug after you've talked about AMC. I was actually going to make a plug for AMSA recently sponsoring an AMC Engineering Your Future campaign, which focuses on increasing enrolments in the maritime engineering space. And we've specifically looked at women in engineering as well and supporting that. So that's just a small plug for AMSA.
Well done, AMSA. It's from the top leadership.
One more. Are we right to go one more? You go, Carmen.
Sorry.
Is that working? Hello?
Only when you're blowing it up. Okay. Sorry. Just following on from the engineering comment, marine engineering is taught here at Hunter TAFE. We have a massive engineering section with a whole engine room, a virtual engine room that you can come and walk around. Well, not virtual. We have a simulator and we actually have an engine room and we have a deck department. So don't go any further. Yes, AMC is great. I went there myself, but you don't actually have to leave the Hunter. Yeah. Oh, and sorry, my predecessor is head teacher Glenn.
Hi, I'm Glenn Hunter. Just to follow up, what you're looking for, especially Emma from Svitzer, is what you're looking for is TVETs. TVETs is the one where you get the kids in year 10 and they're enrolled in a coxswain's course, certificate 2, and they go on and they enter the maritime industry that way. So that's a state-funded TVETs. That's where you're trying to tap into. A couple of things, Elise. Medical care does do gynecology and pregnancy in master's levels, and we do that in our course here too. So yeah, it's included, but it's small, but it's included. TVETs. I'm going to be bold here. I was at sea for 30 years and I sailed with 5 women the whole time. So I'm passionate about this topic. But what's missing in the room, I think, is 95% of males in the industry. Where are them? Where are they sort of talking about it? Bring people, or women into the industry. So I think that's I think that's where they need to step up and actually sort of say, hey, bring them in. But until they do that, you're really pushing it uphill, I'm afraid.
We won't stop though. Doesn't mean that we're going to stop. We'll bring them along.
Yeah, so back to my point was for Emma mainly as an employer, and I used to work for Svitzer too. So what are you doing to review your current employment conditions without talking about awards, but actually conditions such as the permanent part-time 50% or 75% a role, which is just untenable for a woman to commit to that role and to a family? Because, where's your job when you come back from maternity leave? It's not... You've got employment conditions at the moment that are not going to retain women. They haven't retained women. Are you reviewing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do look at our benefits and our conditions. We offer our seafarers 18 weeks paid maternity leave, should they seek to access that. We are looking at our roles. We do have a number of part-time roles today. It is actually in our most of our enterprise agreements the ability to request part-time or reduced work. It has to work operationally, but I can say concretely we have a number of examples where we have facilitated it. We want to continue to facilitate that. I acknowledge it's required because it's very difficult to juggle these sorts of demanding roles, potentially on a full-time basis when you have family responsibilities. So I'm proud to say in Melbourne we've recently facilitated a 50% rostered role for a female master there. So it is happening slowly, but it's something we are doing, and I personally think we need to do more if we're to increase the numbers.
Well, do you have another question, Janine? Because
I do. It is a really important one, and I think I'd like to invite Gillian Carson-Jackson to help respond to this one. It is around what are we doing, not just here in Australia, but internationally, to support the safety of people on board, in particular women on ships that are internationally trading, where they might be the only one. There have been significant issues in the past few years that have been reported and investigated overseas. I'd like to understand more about what is happening around the world to support the seafarer safety. Gillian, are you happy?
Yes, thank you very much, Janine. My name's Gillian Carson-Jackson. I'm the immediate past president of the Nautical Institute at the international level, and I am a passionate maritime in women in maritime, working with Janine over many years. The issues of psychological safety on board, so thank you for introducing that comment there, Monika, is critical because we need to feel that we're safe. We're not alone, obviously. I was recently on a Women at the Helm webinar with the Younger Members Council of the Nautical Institute online, all women, and it was led by the young women on the Younger Members Council. And I think probably some of the most wonderful and heart-wrenching comments that came out of that was, "Thank you, I'm not alone." And to say thank you, I'm not alone in 2023, when I started in this industry in 1983, is very scary. And to hear Anise say that you're getting told that you get the job because you're the woman in 2023, when I was told that in 1990, is really, really scary. So where's the progress that we're making? But to go specifically to psychological safety, addressing physical assault, the psychological assaults, the issues that you have when you're on board a vessel, it is really important that we address this, and we have taken this head on with work that we're doing internationally. I am part of a group working, think tank working out of the States called COPE, and we are focusing on psychological safety and changing the narrative around the personal safety and social responsibility training that all seafarers must do right now. It's their PSSR. But there's nothing really on that social responsibility. Giving the skill sets, giving the confidence for people to be able to speak up. You said, Monika, when you were 19, you wouldn't have said, "This doesn't fit me." And I didn't say, "This doesn't fit me," until I almost died when I put on a survival suit and I jumped in the water and my feet filled with air because it was way too big and my head went under the water and someone had to rescue me. And then I got really upset, and so they gave me a survival suit to carry with me from ship to ship. So along with my sea bag, I also carried a survival suit. But we need to address these issues for social responsibility, and it's not just women. If we are able to address psychological safety at sea, we address it for the entire industry. And it's not just women who are feeling this issue. There are small men who have equipment that doesn't fit them. They have gloves that don't fit them. It's not that level. It is the fact that we need to have a socially responsible society. And the maritime industry is a melting pot of diversity. We really have that diversity, but we don't necessarily recognize diversity at an equal level. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, but beyond that is acceptance. And we're really working on that. So I'm very pleased to be working with the Flag of Dominica, working with the COPE Foundation, and working with the Nautical Institute on the activities that we're doing supporting psychological safety at sea. And really getting that narrative out there that we need to support our own mental health, recognize others. Australia is far in advance of many cultures around the world with our Are You OK Day, the ability to actually speak about it. The Black Dog Foundation, the work that Soldier On has done. So we have a really great base upon which to work here in Australia to take it to the world. And I am very grateful for the support of what AMSA has been doing, what Australia has been doing, but also what we're seeing now internationally to support women at sea.
Thank you for that. Hunterlink, I'm the CEO of Hunterlink. We're a psychological safety support for any seafarer in this country and out there on those vessels today. So we support all seafarers, and we acknowledge that there is an issue out there. There is an issue for women and men being bullied and harassed on board vessels. We get called daily, we get text, we get Facebook Messenger. No matter how we're contacted, there is an issue, and that needs to be addressed across the board. And so thank you for raising the psychological safety, because it is needed to be highlighted and it is needed to be addressed across the board so women feel safe in the workplace and men feel safe in the workplace, but especially women, to get them into these roles so that they can have that retention that is needed. So thank you. 1800 554 654, 24/7 Hunterlink. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So I know there's so many more questions and so much more talking to do. And please know this is an open forum. It's about collaboration. Reach out to all the people that you've heard speak. Reach out to us. Reach out to Nautical Institute. Hunterlink. Everyone's here and willing to support and help how they can. Thank you very much. I hope that you all had a great time, just like I did. And I'm going to hand it back to our host. There you go.
Thanks very much, Monika. And I'd just like to acknowledge our amazing panel, Monika, Emma, Di, Elise and Mich-Elle and their employers, Svitzer, the Maritime Union of Australia, SeaRoad, AMSA, and Transport for New South Wales for making these ladies available to us today and for their efforts. So thanks very much. So that concludes the formal part of today's event, and we're going to move on to the social part of it all now. But before we do, I'd just like to acknowledge the amazing collaboration that we've seen here today from AMSA, WISTA and the Nautical Institute, as long as our host port, the Port of Newcastle, for allowing us this amazing space to conduct today's event. We've also had some great support from our production team from Illuminate Creative. Thanks very much, guys, for your efforts, and also from the caterers, Sprout Catering. Thank you. So now we've got a chance to socialise and relax. We've got some amazing food and some beverages to enjoy. We will be serving some beer and wine, so just a reminder to everyone to drink responsibly. If you require some assistance booking transport home, please let one of the event organisers know. We're also going to have our friends from Illuminate going around and chatting to people about any thoughts you've had on today. And if you'd like to be filmed talking about those things, it can be shared later on with our event audience. They'd be happy to film you in a short piece there. In addition, we're going to be meeting over at the Lucky Hotel, just on the other side of Hunter Street, for dinner from 6 o'clock tonight. So once this event concludes, we'll head over there and have dinner together, and everyone's most welcome. So thanks very much, everyone, especially those people who have come online, because it's a bit hard to sit down at your computer and put that time aside, so I do appreciate it. And to those of you in the room, I really appreciate you coming here today for this amazing event. Thanks very much, and hope to all see you again soon. Thank you.